Now that we've laid out the main divisions, let's add the remaining details to our welcome page. We'll start from the top and work our way down. At the top, we have an area that is going to hold our widgets. We're going to define that in CSS with an ID selector named widget bar. It's 50 pixels high and it runs the length of the page, which is 850 pixels wide. Note that the widget bar, just like the logos, is going to be inside the header area. So the widget bar is part of the header. Since the widgets inside the widget bar are going to be floating to the right, we are also going to make the widget bar float to the right. Though technically it doesn't matter since the bar has the same width as the page. Finally, we lighten the background to #CCC so that the bar is visible. Up until now, we've been using ID selectors in our divisions. Header widget is a class selector. We use a class selector whenever we have more than one element on the page that needs the same style. A class selector has a dot in front of its name, like .header widget. The header widgets are just under 200 pixels in width. The top margin is 20 pixels and the right margin is 4 pixels. The widgets float to the right. The property line height specifies the distance between lines of text. Even though there's only one line of text in these little widgets, the line height distance here prevents the text from being jammed up against the top of the box. If you try replacing line height with height in your own code, you'll see what I mean. This is the HTML code that includes the widget bar and the header widgets. Note that this will be nested inside the header division, just as the header widgets here are nested inside of the widget bar. The widget divisions each contain some text that acts as a placeholder for the future widgets. Recall that in our original mockups for the welcome page, the shopping cart widget was further to the left to make room for a proceed to checkout widget that sits between the shopping cart and the language tools widget. It's actually very easy to make room for that widget. All you have to do is put another header widget division in the HTML code. And this is what that looks like. The added header widget division is empty, so nothing shows. Interestingly, not even the background color of the division is displayed. So this is a way to make room for the proceed to checkout widget without adding a lot of extra code. Now let's look at the Affable Bean logo and the Affable Bean text. The logo is a 155 pixel square that floats to the left. In the HTML code, the logo will come after the widget bar. Since the widget bar takes up the width of the page, a left floating logo with no margins would reside just under the widget bar and it would be flush against the left side of the page. But we do have margins here. The left margin moves the logo 30 pixels to the right, and the top margin moves the logo 20 pixels into the widget bar area. That's because we have a negative number on the top margin. The HTML code here is an image inside of a link. Because we do not have a legitimate source for our image yet, the alt text is displayed, which is Affable Bean logo. The logo text style floats the area to the left, just like the logo selector. When a margin property has 4 values, the first one is the top and then it goes clockwise from there. The second is on the right, the third is on the bottom, and the fourth is on the left. Therefore, the area is 20 pixels down from the widget bar and 70 pixels over from the logo. The font here is set to a size of 50 pixels, and the font family is American Typewriter. The other fonts are added in case the first is not available. Notice that there's no defined height or width here. In this case, the height and width are determined by the text in the selected area. The HTML code puts a placeholder for an image here. But again, since there is no image, the alternate text is used, the Affable bean. It turns out that the image is going to look very similar to the text you see here. Now let's turn our attention to the categories in the right column. There will be two selectors that are involved in styling these categories, and they are both class selectors because they will be used multiple times in the same document. The first selector is the category box. The category box is 176 pixels high and 212 pixels wide. The margin property here has 3 values. When this happens, the first value is the top, the second is the left and the right margin, and the third is the bottom. The float property is inherited from its surrounding style, which in this case is the right column. If you remember correctly, the right column floats to the left, so the category boxes will float to the left also. But if the category boxes all float to the left, how did they end up in a 2x2 grid? Well, in the HTML code, the dairy category box will come first, then meats, then bakery, then fruit and veg. When a category box is placed, it goes as close to the top and left of the right column that it can. But the margins are considered in the placement. Here are the margins of the dairy box. So you can see that it is going right against the top left corner in the right column. And a similar thing happens with the meats box. It goes to the top left without overlapping the dairy box. When it comes time to place the bakery box, there's no room for it next to the meats box. But there is room below the dairy box, so it goes against the top left corner underneath the dairy box. And a similar thing happens with the fruit and veg box. This wrapping behavior is very convenient when you want to make a grid of boxes without creating a table. Before we leave the right column, let's take a quick look at the HTML for one of these boxes. This code shows that the dairy text uses the category label text style and that it is part of a link that is contained inside the category box area. We haven't mentioned this yet, but you should use a div element when you require a style container for a block of other elements. And you should use a span element when you require a style container for some inline text. This is the final template for the index page. We put a welcome text section inside the left column, and we're going to use an ID selector for that. And we put a horizontal rule and some footer text inside the footer. Finally, we shrunk the footer width to 350 pixels because that's all the space we really need for it. Here's the HTML and CSS code for this last portion. Note that because we're only ever using one horizontal rule or horizontal line on our entire site, we simply provided an element selector in the CSS code. That effectively means that we globally set the style properties for all horizontal rules. And that's it for the welcome page. There are still 4 other pages to do, and you can attempt to do them yourself, or you can just download snapshot number 1 of the Affable Bean project, which is a zip file, and put the zip file in your NetBeans workspace. Then go into NetBeans and import the zip file. It will open the partially built project in your IDE. Of these remaining page views, I would suggest paying special attention to the category page. Doing that will help you understand how a selected category differs from a regular category, and it will also help you understand how to apply cascading style sheets to tables.